And then we knew that, okay, SQLite, it's great. Everybody loves SQLite, myself included. So simple. My toaster probably runs SQLite. And
Wait,
what
did you
do
say
you do
toaster?
then? Your toaster runs SQLite, I bet you.
Oh, got it. I didn't know if you said toaster.
I said toaster. Yeah. Should nice. Is it a bad word? I don't know.
No,
don't you
no,
like toast? I mean, I like toast. I don't.
Okay, hey everyone, welcome to the SQ.R.E.A.M podcast. My name is Jay. I'm the CEO of SQ.R.E.A.M.
Chris, my name's Chris. I am an engineer on the SQ.R.E.A.M team, and I produce this podcast.
And last but not least, we have Glauber Costa on the podcast, an ex-contributor to the Linux kernel, an ex-early engineer at ScyllaDB, and now the CEO and co-founder of Turso, a rising database startup. Glauber, welcome to the show.
First, thank you, but I need to correct you on that. I am the founder. My co-founder is the co-founder. I'm the founder.
Okay, let me redo it. How does that sound?
No,
no.
Keep it in. Don't redo it. Keep it in the podcast.
Keep going.
You're just messing with them.
Yeah, I'm just messing. Pekka, my co-founder Pekka, also used to be in the Linux kernel. So we worked together in the Linux kernel for 10 years. For 5 of those 10 years, quite close to each other.
Okay.
Which were the worst 5 years of my life, potentially. I guess it's worse now in some sense. But he used to be the maintainer of the parts of the memory management subsystem. Memory management in Linux was already like too big that there were many maintainers.
Okay.
But now I am the CEO. So you see things.
Oh, I see. We
change.
Need to be clear
things
about
change.
that.
I was the one always, begging, please back up, merge my code, come on, etc. Like now I'm the one.
Now it's flipped.
I have the upper hand.
Flipped.
There you go. So life is like that, man. Life comes at you fast. There you go.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, side note, but Glauber and Chris, nice haircuts.
I guess.
brothers in our hairstyle.
I am starting to grow a mustache as well for an event that we're doing with the Primagen. So I don't know when this is going live, but May the 9th, we have an event called BrazilMention.com, just to leave it out there. It is it's going to take place in Brazil. We're doing our company meeting at Turso in Brazil this year, partially because of that as well. So if you are in Brazil and if you want to see the Primagen live, show up. And I lost the Twitter post, so I put this poll on Twitter asking people if I should dye my hair blue or grow a mustache. And I guess the people who know me voted for the mustache.
Nice.
So I'm starting tomorrow. I have a month, so we'll see.
Good. Nice. I don't think you can fail with the mustache.
There you go.
So I want to know what city are you going to be in?
São Paulo.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
Nice. But yeah, cool. Glauber, good to have you. Let's start with just a little bit of background on Turso. I mean, I feel like we've been in touch for the last 2-3 years of our respective startups, but tell us a little bit about why you originally started Turso and maybe a quick story on like how things have kind of culminated since then in terms of the product and the company, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, like I was employee number 3 at a database company. And Pekka was employee number 4, so my co-founder. So we've been working together. Like as soon I say that he joined because I joined. He says it's not the case, and it was just a coincidence. You believe whoever you want to believe, but he's not here. I am.
Yeah, exactly.
And
he has
so
no
we
say.
work. Yeah, he has no say. We work together like in this database company for forever, man. Like 8 years in total. It was a pivot. We actually joined the company was doing a unikernel. Unikernels are very interesting concepts. There is a company, by the way, that's kicking ass with unikernels right now called Unicraft. If you want to, would love to introduce you to their founder as well.
Okay.
And I think unikernels back then, it was probably not the right time because that ideas have this as well. Like sometimes it's the right idea at the wrong time. It doesn't work. Or it could be the wrong approach or many things. I don't think it was the right time. Right? Just it's more than the approach. And it didn't work. And then we pivoted to Scylla. So when we joined the company that became Scylla, Becca and I didn't join a database company. We joined a company writing a kernel, right? Just coming from that's why we joined. We wanted to have this experience. We were coming again 10 years with Linux and operating systems and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I never was very much interested in databases. I mean, it's not that I hate it or anything like that. It's just that, it's just like any other thing. I mean, just it's not my thing. I like low level stuff in general. So, databases are almost there, but I wanted to be around, the stuff that I knew. And so databases were a little bit of an accident for me. We did become pretty good on that. And here I want to give credit to Pekka, like he much better because he's the brains of the operation. I'm the funny one, I guess. But after all this time, we wanted to start a company together. We knew that we wanted to do something together first and foremost. We sat down and said, "Hey, Pekka, what do you want to do?" And then we agreed that we wanted to do anything. Like we consider all options, like OnlyFans and etc. Like you name it. Like they said, as long as we don't start a database company, we're okay. I just And so we didn't. We started another company, which is when we got introduced. Like that was in the data space as well. So I mean, it's not that the OnlyFans thing is half a joke. We're not gonna, you have to stay around the domains that right? So
that you're good at, at least within striking distance. Yeah,
you don't have to be good at it. Like people have to think that you're good at, which is sometimes it's a match, sometimes it's not. But so we started SQ.R.E.A.M. And that's when we got introduced because we got an investor in common, I guess. And SQ.R.E.A.M. was not a database company. It was handling data. We were using SQLite in quite creative ways. We were trying to do like state management, like global persistent state management for TypeScript at the edge. You've seen a bunch of demos for SQ.R.E.A.M. And SQ.R.E.A.M was okay. I mean, it was quite an interesting concept. It wasn't ballooning, like it wasn't like going ballistic or hockey stick or anything like that, but we were getting our first production users and it was okay.
And the idea behind SQ.R.E.A.M is that like in TypeScript you can describe how you want to interact with your data, kind of thing. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so the idea is that you could write. Our idea was like, look, the fundamental thing is that you could write just TypeScript, and then we had a compiler, we had an analyzer. And we would extract from that code you wrote SQL statements and push it to the database. So use it was something like the database and an ORM merged together.
Got it.
Right. So you import a package and then you write, but you could write like for loops. And we would say, hey, this for loop here, part of it can become a part of the SQL query. The other parts cannot become a SQL query. So it becomes like a fetch command and so we would look into your code and figure out like the best way to turn this code into database code.
Yep.
So it's still quite close to the database, and to do that we needed a lot of control at the database layer. Like so, you can imagine that this problem in the general case is almost impossible to solve. So for us, it's like the idea is that you put enough guardrails that you write in the code in such a way that it makes this problem possible. So. We use SQLite. And we use SQLite because our idea was like, hey, this has to work on TypeScript. It has to work anywhere. Like when you do npm, you don't have to install anything else. And then we knew that SQLite, it's great. Everybody loves SQLite, myself included. So simple. My toaster probably runs SQLite. And
wait, what did you say toaster?
Then? Your toaster runs SQLite, I bet you.
Oh, got it. I didn't know if you said toaster.
Yeah, I said toaster. Okay. Yeah. Should nice. Is it a bad word? I don't know.
No,
don't you like toast? I mean, I like toast. I don't.
I do like toast. I do like toast.
You don't like toast? Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Who doesn't like toast, man? I think this is the question.
Yeah, actually, toast is agreed upon.
Toast is toast, man. Agreed upon.
High level, very highly rated food.
Highlight of my day today, my breakfast. But anyway, going back to SQLite, like. What do you do? Like, okay, it runs locally. It's all beautiful. It's all great. It's simple. Everybody likes it. Allows us to have this kind of merging of code and data that we wanted to have to make this product possible. But then what do you do when you want to really run this thing in production, replicate it with replicas and across the globe? And that we were pursuing like the edge story as part of that as well.
Yep.
And when we started the company, our idea is like, I don't know, just we'll figure it out. Just that's how we start companies. I bet a lot of Highlight was like that. So did you have moments like that in Highlight and just like we'll figure it out later?
Yeah.
So you're familiar with the feeling. The problem is that like when it was time for us to start figuring that out, it turned to be a lot harder than we anticipated. Not on the technical side, but SQLite is essentially an immutable piece of software. And the reason I say this is that if you go to SQLite.org/copyright.html, you're going to see a statement from the creator of SQLite that says this is open source, not open contribution. So there are 3 people behind SQLite. They write all of the code for SQLite. And if you want anything else in SQLite that is not that, good luck, right? And again, we spent 10 years, Pekka and I, with Linux. And Linux, if you remember, Jay, you're a young guy. I'm not going to assume you've seen that, but you might have read about it like in the history books, in museums and stuff like that. Linus Torvalds put this project out and he said like, hey, this is never going to work for nothing more than like x86 PCs, etc. Like this is what I'm writing Linux for. And like famously, Andrew Tannenbaum was a famous OS guy, criticized Linux because the design that everybody believed that was the best of the day was this modular multi-architecture design. And Linus was like, I don't care. I mean, I'm just doing this for my own toy purposes.
Yep.
And 20 years later, Linux runs everywhere just because of this, because new people came in this community and started pulling in the same direction. So it's not too much about the code. It's about the direction of the product, right? We started seeing like, there was a lot of pull. We were not the only ones that were looking to SQLite to solve this problem of very nimble data being pushed around the globe. So there could have been a community that formed around it, but the SQLite community was just not open to that, right?
Got it.
And then we decided to fork it. But when we decided to fork it, we didn't have the idea that the company, that this will become a company. We decided to fork it because we would say, hey, look at the way things are going. Like we're going to have to fork it in practice anyway to do what we need to do. Might as well fork it and open up, because we've seen a lot of people forking SQLite before. Again, we saw a graveyard of projects that fork SQLite. Again, this is not new. You look around, you find SQLite for encryption, SQLite for this, SQLite for that. And then we say, hey, look, this is not just the way we want to play this. So what we're going to do is we created a project called LeapSQL. And we said LeapSQL is going to be the open contribution fork of SQLite. We wrote like a manifesto style kind of document saying those are the things that we want to do.
Yeah.
And some of them, by the way, we don't consider relevant anymore. We decided not to do. But in the manifesto, it's like it was a directional thing, like those aspirational, right? Aspirational.
Yep.
I sound smarter, I think, when I say aspirational. But like we put it out there and said, hey, look, those are some things that we want to do. If you have other things that you want to do, join us and let's do it. And then we saw like LeapSQL got 1,500 GitHub stars in 2 weeks.
Wow.
It's a vanity metric, but for comparison, SQ.R.E.A.M had 1,000 GitHub stars after 1 year. And you know that 1,000 GitHub stars is not like an easy metric to beat, but like we look at LeapSQL and it became clear to us that, that had to be the direction of the company.
People care about it kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like people care about it more or something, or the
exactly.
market's bigger,
There's
whatever
more,
it is.
Whatever it is. And it's not that true. I mean, hindsight is 2020, right? So when we look back, it looks simple. Oh, we saw that, and it became obvious. It's a little bit more involved,
a lot more
than that.
Nuanced.
We had to sit down and we had to think about it. I think there were some mistakes that we made in the process, in all fairness. But be it as it may, we were saying, hey, look, just at some point, I said, let's do it. And then the question becomes like, how do you build a company around a fork of SQLite? I mean, there's no SQLite is a library database, which it is. Like there is not a lot of commercial interest there.
Well,
again,
actually,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, were you working on Chisel Strike when you were doing this?
Yes.
And the goal.
Yes.
So the goal of forking SQLite was for the purposes of Chisel Strike.
Yes.
Not to start a new or pivot at that point, kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
No, I want to be transparent with that. Like, we knew that there was a part of us knew that there was a chance this would blow up.
Yeah.
But we
in and
didn't
of itself, like in isolation.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's not. I think we were a little bit surprised with how much, but like I think a part of us, like when we discussed that a couple of times, and say, hey, look, just because Chisel Strike was at the stage that like after 1 year, like we had, as I said, 1,000 GitHub stars, and we were starting to. But when you're doing startups, as you know, like you're always looking for like, hey, is this the explosive thing that is venture scale and it's going to become a $1 billion company or not? And we did not know. In our mind, it was like it could be, it could not be. Maybe it needs more work. Maybe not. So when we put this out there, I think part of us knew that there was a chance that this could become so big that it would take over. Some people actually had this concern. What do we do if this becomes so big? And I said, are you crazy? Like this is
that's we'll solve that problem when it happens.
Exactly. Like what do we do if this becomes bigger than Chisel Strike? Some people internally had this concern. I said, dude, just I wish all my problems were like that, right? Just so it turns out we had this problem, and then Becca and I and the others that we had, a lot of people in the company by now, had to have this heart to heart and say, look, we're becoming a database company, aren't we? Like the thing that we didn't want, it's happening, and then it happened.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. That's an awesome journey.
Origin
so far.
story. It's an origin story.
Yeah.
Super villain origin story.
Yeah. So now in terms of where you are with libSQL and Turso at this point, like tell me more about what's the value proposition of the product and the company and that kind of thing.
So here's the thing. Going back to our thought process, what do we do with this, right? And one of the options is just like keep doing Chisel Strike, but now Chisel Strike, the company, has this amazing side project which helps marketing or whatnot. And but then again, we decided one thing about Chisel Strike that was quite interesting is that it was very hard to explain what it was, right? And lots of people came to our community because of the SQLite aspect, and they knew we were using SQLite. So we also found that like a database is just a lot simpler to explain. And then we thought a lot about how to monetize and how to build a company around just a fork of SQLite. And the conclusion that we got to, the time will tell if we were right or wrong, was that like the way to monetize a database is by being a database. That's it. I mean, it sounds simple and obvious, but not that simple, not that obvious.
Yeah.
Because you can always go for like, but then it's a database for this, it's a database for that. Is this a vector database? This is a NoSQL database, etc. And they say, hey, the best way to monetize, because the thing that is simple, the thing that everybody needs, the thing that everybody wants is a database, and a relational database at that. By using SQLite, we figure that we could have a database that would be faster, cheaper, and scale to zero better than anything else in the market. So it will be naturally serverless, because SQLite is just a file at the end of the day, right? So if you're using the file, you're using resources. If you're not using the file is there sitting on your storage, doesn't do anything. So we figure like there's a lot of companies trying to be serverless databases, so we can be much better at that.
Yeah.
And again, we can be faster because SQLite is faster. SQLite, it can be cheaper because, again, SQLite is this thing that runs on toasters, so it can run with very little memory.
Yeah.
Meaning that we can put less compute resources for you to do. Like, now, you give something in return for that, which is
you toast.
The database is a lot. Yeah, the database is a lot simpler.
Sorry, I was joking.
It was a good joke, man. It was a good joke. But and I was trying to see like how I build up on your joke, and the reason I build up on, I don't know if I can build that. Just
and it's okay.
I'm not gonna even try. But
I also interrupted you. But
no, it's fine.
Keep going. So faster.
You are toast in a sense because you don't have all of those like beautiful constructs that a database like Postgres will give you, right? So you have to give something in return. You only have the toast. You don't have the eggs. You don't have the bacon.
There's no JSON B column, is there?
There is a JSON-B column there. There is, yes. But for example,
but the simplicity
SQLite,
is in the infrastructure, right? It's
yes,
like,
yeah,
it's in the fact that at zero utilization, it's literally just a file, right?
yeah. No, but for example, Postgres has a variety of indexes. SQLite is the JavaScript of databases. You have a column, and the column has a type, but the type is more of a suggestion. Like you can put everything anywhere, and even the suggestion, there are only 4 types, right? There are fewer things that you can do. Schema changes are not that. Postgres
Complex.
is very good at doing that. Like a SQLite is a little bit of a pain. Actually, we made it better. libSQL does schema changes better than SQLite, but still not as good as Postgres. But what we figured is that those were drawbacks that the community was by and large already familiar with, because there is 20 years of SQLite out there.
Yeah.
And SQLite is a proven technology, right? And here's the thing, like our bet was that we're going to be able to put something out there that is so simple, because there's also that there's not SQLite is also simpler than Postgres, so it's easier. Like it's easier for you to get started. Like it's when you're developing with Turso, you don't have to spin up anything. You develop with a file, with a local file. You don't have to develop over the web. You can put it on your CI as a file. Like it's super simple. So it's simple, it's easy, it's cheap, it's fully serverless, meaning that we can have like a free tier that is very generous because it doesn't use a lot of resources.
Yeah.
And our bet is that a large percentage of the market would prefer that. But we don't talk to that as like as a niche database. We went for like, hey, here's a SQL database, and it happens to be based on SQLite. And like there is this fight between MySQL and Postgres going on since forever. And part of our bet is that, hey, can we put SQLite there for prime times? That's what we're hoping to do.
Very cool. Very cool. And so is there anything to be talked about in the terms of like me as a developer when I connect to Turso, how updates are made and things like that? Like, is there a copy of the SQLite database on the server that I'm querying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you talk more to that? Like how all the moving parts work in short?
So one of the first things that we want to do that led us to creating the libSQL project was replication.
Okay.
And the cost thing also shows up here because, for example, traditionally replication is, which is why in the beginning we went with that message a lot. We since saw that is not a message that works very well as a leading message. So we've been emphasizing other things. But our free tier, which you pay $0 for, that's usually the definition of free, comes with 3 replicas. Replication is usually something very costly, very complex that you have to set up and etc. So we could, through what we offer, essentially give you like 3 replicas for free.
Got it.
And then in the first paid plan we have 6, right? So we went already for like this like massive replication, and then what happens is that another change that we did to SQLite is that we took control of the write-ahead log. So the write-ahead log is the stream of changes that are being made to the database. So when you make a transaction, before you write this transaction into the database B3, you put the transaction in the write-ahead log.
Got it.
Right?
Just like Postgres.
And then, just like pretty much like any B3-based database. So what you're going to do, what we do is that we replicate this write-ahead log to the other replicas. And there is a server, because another thing that we notice is that these days, lots of people use serverless. And SQLite is not something that you can use on serverless because it's a file, and serverless environments don't have a file system. So again, in this mission of like just being a general purpose database, what we do, other databases like Postgres, for example, they have the database, the server that's running. And if you want to access it from environments that don't support TCP, like Cloudflare, Workers, and Vercel, Edge, and etc., you can put an HTTP proxy on top. Now, Turso already is HTTP native. So essentially what we wrote is a HTTP server that has in that route has a SQLite file. So by sending SQL commands to that HTTP address, you're executing things, right? So you send a select query, you send an update query, an insert, or whatever you want to do, and then I give you back the response. And there is a SQLite file there. And every write that you do, so you write to a primary, and every write that you do is then I ship the write ahead log to the replicas, however many replicas you have. So you have this global server, right, that can now take SQL queries.
So go ahead, Esplin.
How does that work with like a Cloudflare worker, for instance?
Yeah.
So I can write with the Cloudflare worker. Then I also do my reads as well from the Cloudflare worker just over HTTP.
That's right. I hope so. Imagine that. No reads, just writes. But a database that doesn't take writes is the simplest database. The database that doesn't take reads is the easiest database to write.
So
we used to joke a lot with MongoDB back when I was a kid, man. But anyhow, like you just send HTTP requests. So you can put anything in those requests. You can put insert commands, you can put update commands, you can put select commands. Now, what's interesting is the following. One of the things that we did, again, in the beginning, we focused a lot on replication. And we wanted this database to be like the database with the best developer experience ever. And as I said, it's I like to think of Turso sometimes as a web server that has SQLite files in the routes.
Yeah.
In a sense, it is. So we have load balancing across the regions and all of that. When you hit a replica, it might be that somebody else wrote to the primary and you don't have that data yet.
Got it.
So that's fine. So you're reading something in the past. But for most web applications, this is completely fine.
Yep.
Now, when you have a connection, like when you create a client, and so we put a lot of smarts into the replication protocol of Turso. When you create a client, and then in that client object, you write everything you read after that, you read your own writes. Right? So we keep track, and there's some magic or technology to do this. So you never have the case where your client writes and then reads, and then you read the value that is there before what you wrote. So you're always moving forward. But if you spin up another worker, then that worker can see something in the past. But if you think about it, that's completely fine because databases are transactional. And if you have a long transaction going on, other people that are coming and reading can read things that are before your transaction. That's the definition of a transaction, right? So this behavior, as it turns out, is totally fine for the vast majority of applications.
Makes sense. So okay, can you maybe a quick education on how SQLite works, right? But let's say with the Cloudflare worker example, right? I create a client in Turso, and then I do a write and then a read. When I do the write, there is some SQLite executable that's executing some logic to send the write to the local file, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then that executable,
but it's not really an executable. It's really a SQL string, right? You're sending the SQL command, the select star from etc. Right?
Sure. Yeah. And then there's some logic written in C or something that writes to the file, right?
Well, it's Rust, but
got it. Okay, and then that Rust. So what you guys have re-architected is you've rewritten that Rust logic to not only write to the local file, but to send an update to your REST server and tell the master to replicate against everything else, right?
Yeah, in a sense. So like SQLite itself is written in C. We try our best. We try our best to every piece of code. Not always it's possible because some things are but whenever possible, we try to add new code in Rust.
Got it.
So it's one of the things that we try to do just because, I value my sanity. C is not how you achieve sanity in life, but
sure.
Although I know it is a contentious opinion with some folks, but anyhow,
got it.
I've done C for a long time, man, and look at the result. But it's pretty much that. I mean, there's some small details like you can only so when everybody in this cluster knows who their primary is.
Got it.
So if I'm not the primary, I don't write to my local file. I proxy the request to the primary because I know who the primary is, right?
Okay.
So there are two scenarios. You can hit the primary directly, or you can hit a replica. If you hit the primary directly, then it's what you described, like you write to the local file, and then once it's committed to the local file, you distribute that to the replicas. If you're writing to a replica, then you write the replica proxies it to the primary. And to simplify, it's a little bit more complex than that, but to simplify, I would say, and waits for the return to come back.
Understood.
Because
but it's actually a little, it's a little
Yeah.
faster than that because of that
Yeah.
logic you talked about earlier, where any
Mhm.
write that I write is read instantly or whatever it is. But
Yeah,
I kind of get what you're saying.
That's the simple. This happens because of this. Because it's not what happens in reality is that I return the write immediately. I don't wait for the replication to come back to me as a replica. So I just tell the client. I tell the client your write is acknowledged, okay, and the replication index, because the replication index is essentially a number that keeps growing and keeps track of how many frames you wrote. And I say, okay, so your write is acknowledged, and the replication index is X.
Yeah.
So next time I read, I say, hey, I want to read something, and I need to read with a replication index of at least X.
Got it.
So if the replica doesn't have X, it proxies the read to the primary as well.
Understood.
And this can happen for like a couple of 100 milliseconds or whatnot, and then the replica will reach that replication index, and then new requests will be served from the replica. But that's how we achieve like regional writes, because we tell the client like the replication index that you need to expect.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And so if I have the last question I have about how it works, and I imagine we can talk about this forever, but the last question I have is like, so if I am on your paid tier that gives me 6 replicas, and I have 8.
Now I have a tier with 10 replicas, which is a little bit more expensive, but
Okay.
in enterprise you can essentially have as many as you want. Just
sure. So if let's say I have 6, right? Yeah. If I have 7 Cloudflare workers running in parallel, I can expect that 7th worker to always read and write from the primary. Is that how that would work?
No, not at all. Because we will send you to the closest replica geographically. So it depends on where your workers are, right? So this layer of picking a replica is not a load. It's a geographical load balancer. It's not a load balancer in the sense of like I'm gonna round robin.
So those replicas aren't running on the workers.
No. The replicas
they're running on
your
infrastructure.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So then,
because on the worker, I cannot run like a long-lived process, server-like process on a worker, right? So that's the thing. That's the thing that we did.
Okay,
you can't really run SQLite on a worker, so we had to build this server, which is a web server that you connect.
Got it. So when now I'm understanding. So if I have any logic that I'm reading and writing from the DB, it doesn't happen locally on that same machine. It happens in the closest replica, right?
That's right. There you go.
Okay. Very cool. Nice.
Now we can. Okay. Here's the thing. This is a challenge for us. Like as we grow and as we evolve, as we realize our vision, how to explain what Turso is, because then in the beginning, lots of people thought that Turso, and in all fairness, that's what you saw in front of you.
I kind of guessed,
but just Turso is just serverless and etc. But like over time, we evolve. Like so, over time, we brought new features in, because our intention was never to be a serverless only database. So you can run, and you always could. By the way, you always could run Turso not on Cloudflare, not on Vercel. You can run Turso on Fly.io or anywhere that you want. And then in those environments, we can do something even cooler. Because in those environments, what I can do, so imagine you are on AWS with an EC2 instance or Kubernetes, or if you are on Fly.io, and because you're not serverless, you're going to have a file system.
Yeah.
So if you have a file system, then I can replicate the file inside your server, because now your latency is 0, essentially.
Understood. And then reads are just like insanely fast. Like
that's right.
Like
Because
Yeah. Okay.
Because you don't need to go through the network. I mean, if you don't have a file system, which is the serverless case, I'm going to do the second best thing, which is I'm going to put the replica close to you.
Okay.
If you have a file system, I can put the replica inside your server, right? But that is the best thing possible. And now
that's
you have
what
again.
I assumed.
Yeah.
That's what I assumed. But yeah, I guess in the Cloudflare environment, you can't do that.
Exactly.
There's some limitations. Okay. Makes sense.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So how do you handle just the ability? I've been doing some SQLite recently, and the ability to just handle massive amounts of reads and writes on that, when it's just local to that one file seems kind of crazy. How do you handle that then, replicating back and forth?
So again, the reads are easy. The reads are very, very easy because the beautiful thing about that is that we chart the way we call this feature embedded replicas. And the way embedded replicas work, just for you to have the full context, is that, and we'll change that in the future. This is the roadmap. It's going to take us a little bit more than 3 months because we're busy with other stuff now. But we want the writes to happen locally as well. But that's not how it works now. And then Turso would essentially be like a backup or a failover. But the way it works now is that the writes always go to the primary. So you have to be, and we call this offline writes. Again, we don't have that. We're going to have it hopefully in 3-4 months. But the way it works now is that every time you write, your writes go straight to the primary and then get replicated back to your embedded replica. The beautiful thing about that is that, again, this model doesn't work very well if you write a lot. It works, but it can become quite expensive because our bandwidth costs are quite high. So like we charge you, like as you said, there's a lot of back and forth. So if you write a lot, our recommendation is don't do that. Just go to the primary directly and do your stuff there. It's cheaper than. But if you don't write a lot, I mean, if your writes are under control, the beautiful thing about that is that we will charge you for the replication. So every time you replicate, we'll charge you for the bandwidth. But then every reads that you do locally are free and fast, right? So this mode of operation, and Turso is quite flexible, so you can do one way or you can do another way. But this mode of operation is great for workloads with a lot of reads because you're paying no network latency and you're paying no database cost. You essentially have you're using Turso like if your server dies, you replicate the database again, right? If you want to scale horizontally, you can have like 3, 4, 5 copies now, all kept in sync by Turso central node, but you don't pay the reads. I mean, you can do 1 trillion reads a second if your machine allows it. The biggest, the craziest benchmark I've ever seen with SQLite was like 4 million reads a second. Pretty beefy machine, but SQLite can get there. So do 4 million reads a second. Don't pay Glauber a dime. Just right.
Nice. How do you think about the splitting the logic between Turso, the company, and libsql, the project? Because for example, let's say I want to write, like you're talking about choosing to read from the primary, right? Or choosing to write to the primary versus write to a replica. Like, does that level of abstraction logic live in the Turso world? Does it live on the libsql world? How do you think about that?
It's all open source. Everything is open source. Turso is just a managed service of this database.
Okay.
So, for example, you're gonna install libsql yourself. You can run it. That's fine. Go again. Open source, fully open source, and open contribution. So please send your PRs.
Sounds good.
On Turso, we're gonna have like the URL routing because if you just run the replicas, each replica has their own URL. So on Turso, we have a routing layer on top to always automatically route you to the closest replica. We set up the TLS certificates, like we do all of that for you. We're going to give you a platform API to create databases. So we build essentially a managed version of this, but the whole database is open source.
Wow. Okay. And then if we're thinking about this as, a startup that collects a lot of data from our customers and has, queuing systems and
for example, highlight.io, just as a hypothetical example. Okay.
If the company were called highlight.io, and we, you can look it up if you want to look more about that example. But if that was our name, highlight.io, and we had several software components, Glauber, have you anecdotally from your customers seen companies replace part of those components with Turso,
Oh
or is
yeah.
it normally like a new use case that you see? Like, how do you see this more in I guess a more enterprise environment kind of
No,
becoming relevant,
both.
or is it
Yeah,
more
both.
so a new sort of trend?
I see both happening. We
Okay. Okay.
see a lot of cases in which, like, I had a call yesterday with this guy who was saying, "Hey, look, we have some Postgres, we have some Mongo. Like, we're thinking about moving this part of the service to Turso." And then again, it could be for cost reasons, could be for performance reasons, it could be for whatever other reasons. It could be for compliance reasons. Like, one of the things that SQLite does very well, and this is a pattern that people have been using, and we're trying to lean more and more into this use case. People have been doing this for ages with SQLite. Is that what is how long do you think it takes to create a Postgres database? To create a database, just
To build it or
yeah,
to
30 seconds.
30 seconds or like a couple of seconds, etc. Like, so
Yeah, it's
yeah.
seconds.
If you want to say like I need a Postgres database right now as a result of this API call. Like, this API call is going to create a Postgres database for whatever, right?
yeah.
It takes a couple of seconds. How long do you think it takes to create a SQLite database?
Well, I'm biased because you're asking the question.
Well, no, think about it.
Milliseconds.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Milliseconds.
Milliseconds, because it's just creating the file. So we play very well with use cases where you need to create databases on demand. So some people, although I haven't seen that a lot in practice, some people have considered creating a database per session. So somebody comes to your website, starts a session, and create a database. Then you can use the database to keep the data.
Those types of use. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of what excites me about this, where
yeah,
you can kind of start to do really interesting things like
yeah,
that, you know? Like,
yeah,
for example, we use Redis for some session management, but then we use Redis for like a lot of other stuff. And
yeah.
it's kind of a mess, I guess, right?
Some of
And
that stuff you can move to Turso.
yeah, yeah.
Although I do want to say that Redis is one of the only companies that changed the license in a way that I support.
Oh, okay. And how's
I do.
that? Like what?
Can
Yeah.
I be controversial?
Yeah, do it.
I've seen on Twitter people saying that by changing the license, Redis abandoned their key values, and the fact that this license change allowed this joke to exist for me is just worth it. It's just a simulation kind of stuff. Imagine that. Did you get the joke, or should I
I
repeat it?
don't get it. No.
Redis. Here's Glauber explaining the joke. Redis is a key value. Okay, and got it. And by moving to a different license, they abandon their key values. Did you get it now?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
I
So I
like
think
it.
that alone makes the move worth it. But look, the idea of like database per session is something that so far I've seen people talk about it, but if anybody built that on Turso, I haven't seen. But what we see a lot is database per user. So if you go look at Astro, for example, Astro built their own database offering called Astro DB on top of Turso. So somebody creates, like, Astro is a framework that does like content management
Yeah.
and web stuff. Not for they do a little bit of applications that are more focused on the content web. So you have those collections, and every time you create a collection, you create a SQLite database, and then
And
Turso
it's
just
super
pumps those. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's super read heavy, so it's like
Yeah,
perfect
exactly,
use case for
exactly. Yeah. So
Turso. Makes a lot of sense.
the user goes, creates a new project. Turso gives them a database in 100 milliseconds, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, last thing I was curious about, Glauber, is tell me more about the Primeagen stuff. I'm a big fan of the Primeagen on YouTube.
Yeah,
Tell me more
me
about
too,
how
man.
the relationship was built, and where y'all are now, and that event that you had in Brazil, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I respect the Primeagen a lot, and I really do. And look, people think it's I just say it. I really mean it. Because look, as a business owner, I should be sponsoring everybody who wants to talk about my product, right? But I really don't feel like. First of all, you have the budget to sponsor everybody who talks about
Sure,
it.
sure.
Let's start like this. So this is, but we've done a bunch of stuff in the past where you do a video about Turso. Sure, we can sponsor you, but we're very careful with the people that we do long-term relationships with.
Yep.
So I spoke to the Primeagen about sponsoring his content for many months. And again, I don't even remember how many, but it was a long time. And I think it was a two-way street, as far as I know. I mean, he was trying to understand, like, do I want to be? Because he's also like that, and this is part of the reason, not the main reason, but part of the reason I like him so much. I think he was trying to understand, do I want to take this guy's money? Because as an influencer and as a high trust influencer that he is, he doesn't want to risk the fact that you're talking about this company just because they're giving you money. So is this a company I want to take money from?
Yep.
And we were thinking, and to be clear, like, we were always willing to do one video with him. So we wanted, like, hey, we want to sponsor a video. But in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, it feels like a guy I want to have a long-term relationship with. Is that for real? And look, I mean, just he is the one person, I think, in the influencer space that we do want to have a relationship, that we do want to have our brand associated with. And the reason for that, like, the real reason for that, is not only that he doesn't want to be sponsored by anybody, and he has this level of integrity. That, I think, that's part of it as well.
Yeah.
The Primeagen is one of the only influencers and one of the only people that I see, like, on YouTube, etc., that is very deep and respectful about points of view. You see a lot of shallow takes, in the sense that, hey, who needs more than 4 gigabytes of storage anyway? And, like, if you're doing this, or if you're using types, you're using it wrong. If you're using this, and then people live in this bubble where, like, either everything is JavaScript or everything is Go, and they don't see, like, the world outside this niche that they live on. And they think that all problems in the world are like the problems that they have. So they give the advice to people as if the whole market was this niche where they live.
Yep.
Pay attention to how and again, I was looking for that, so I paid attention to that specifically.
Yeah. No,
the Primeagen is never like that.
I agree. And I have I listen to a lot of his content. First of all, I just enjoy listening. There are a lot of, like, developer influencer type people I'm just like, okay, they're just doing it for the clicks, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's not that kind of person.
No.
But then he's also just genuinely fun to listen to.
Yep.
And yeah, keeps you grounded, because he's like a person that has a lot of experience too. So when he sees all these, like, new indie projects get started up, he always takes it with a grain of salt, which is kind of cool.
He started doing this thing with, like, his reading articles. He wasn't doing that when we started the relationship, but
okay.
You will see that he will read an article about some code in C++. I've never seen the guy go, as an example. We've seen other things. I've never seen, C++, who uses C++? He will start to, okay, so this is a problem in C++. Which industry is in? Why is it C++? Is this the right tool? Is it the wrong tool? I mean, he really takes this deep level overview. So that's one of the reasons. Also, I'm not gonna, like, go research it. I'm not gonna even spend time doing this, but, like, go look at his personal life and the struggles that he had, and he talks very openly about his drug issues, his addiction issues, and just the fact that he could overcome all of that and build a family and build a life through his faith that I know he has a lot as well in a higher power. So all of that you put together, I said, man, this is a person I want to work with an industry positioning that I want to work with, and that brings results, because ultimately that matters. So this is where it started. And the Primeagen noticed that, and I don't know why. I truly, don't ask me why. I have a couple of theories, but I don't know why. That every time he would mention Brazil, people would go crazy. People go in his comments and starts, hey, Brazil mentioned, and people mostly from Brazil, I guess, and some they're just joining, start with this idea, like, it creates, like, a big party just because he mentioned Brazil. And then one day, I saw he put on a tweet with the word Brazil, just this, Brazil. And then that tweet had 160,000 views. Everybody in the comments, come to Brazil, come to Brazil, come to Brazil. Now, it clicked for me right away. I called him. I said, dude, I'll take you to Brazil. Let's go to Brazil. How about we go to Brazil? And at first he was resistant. He was like, I don't know, just what the hell am I supposed to do in Brazil? But then we started talking about it, and I said, look, what if we can make, like, an event? We'll make something. Like, we're just not going to go. Like, we'll figure something out so that you can generate great content. That you can do something that will be nice for your channel as well. And then we thought a little bit about how this could be, and at some point he said, hey, let's do it.
Nice.
We have a great company that partner with us. It's one of our customers as well. And they are an international company that have presence all over the globe, but they're from Brazil. So they have offices in Brazil. I'm good friends with their CEO by now. So I called them and said, hey, look, how about we just do it together? Right? And that's ASEAN. If you go to brazilmention.com, you will see ASEAN and Turso are organizing this.
Okay.
And we called the event Brazil Mention because of this, because it came from this thing about Brazil being mentioned.
I see. I see.
Then May the 9th, the Primagen is going to be in Brazil, brought to you by ASEAN and Turso.
Nice. That's a crazy story.
Totally.
And yeah, I feel like for the respect that we have for
you should go,
Turso,
Jay. You should go. You should go.
I'll think about it.
And you know what? There will be during the event there will be something called the Prime Tank, which is like Shark Tank, but Primagen and two other influencers. If you submit an application, exactly. So if you submit an application written with Turso or ASEAN or both, and it doesn't have to be a production application. It's better if it is, but like you can just write something just to showcase there. Make it fun, make it entertaining. You can be selected. You don't have to be from Brazil. You have to be there in person. So submit an application. Maybe something cool about using SQLite as well. And if you're selected, you can go and showcase it.
Good to know. And maybe we'll send you a recording of this snippet, Glauber, so that you can tweet it or something if you want to just like announce it or something. But sounds good. Yeah. Also, this is a little bit of a shill for the Primagen. If you want to be on the podcast, we would love to have you. But maybe this is enough complimenting of the Primagen for him to think about it. So anyway, okay. So I guess we're kind of wrapping up in terms of time. Espen has a couple funny questions to ask. Espen, you want to do it?
I mean, they're important.
Okay. Got it. My bad. I didn't mean to insult you. Okay.
Well, first off, how pointy is the mustache going to be? Are you going to go past the corners of your mouth, or you just stick it?
The thing is that I have as I told you in the beginning, I'm flying to Salt Lake or Park City tomorrow. I didn't want to do that conference with the mustache because I would be okay with that, but it would have been like a very thin mustache to begin with. So I shaved today. I'm doing the conference. I'm flying tomorrow, doing the conference on Thursday, and then I don't know, man. It's I have a month to grow. I've never done this before. I have no idea how far it will go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Nice. Okay.
The edging. I'm just saying the edging is really important.
I know. I'll try my best. I will try my best, but I don't even know if it's going to be thick enough. Like we'll see. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. And then last question, Espen, all you.
Oh, just so why do you, unlike most seasoned developers, not want to become a farmer?
Because my family, my father passed 2 years ago, unfortunately, but he had 12 siblings, all farmers. One of them was eaten by an alligator, which everybody thinks is the joke, but it's not. My oldest uncle, who I never met, was eaten by an alligator in a farm. I milked cows when I was a child because I've been to my uncle's farms, because a lot of my uncles are still there in farms and etc. So I would visit them. I would milk cows. I would ride horses, and I would do stuff like that. So I think I am quite familiar with what running a farm entails, and it's probably the hardest work there is in life. And you see, essentially, when you study history, that for most of our history as humans, we were all farmers, like 80-90% farmers. And then what everybody wanted to do was stop doing it. So I think this idea that developers have, that I'm going to go back to, look, I respect a lot, especially because like developers, I get it. I never disagree with that. Some people thought I was disagreeing with that. Oh, it's high pressure. Like it's a job detached from meaning. Yes, it is. But don't go.
There's not much more meaning in being farmer. Yeah.
You have no idea what farming really is. So I was actually, again, part of the point of I'm not disputing that, yes, all of those problems are real, that you're detached from meaning, you're sitting on a cubicle in an office. Like what I suggested instead is join a monastery, which, is very non, right? So.
I'm personally leaning a little more toward the Forest Service.
I mean, sure. There are many things to do. I mean, there are many things outdoors that you can do. Like if that's the thing, but farming is just incredibly hard. Like I think nobody understands how hard it is.
Makes sense. Okay, well, with that, we will end things on the Highlight podcast. Glauber, thank you so much for joining.
Jay, this was the highlight of my day, man.
Oh, no pun intended. By the way, have you heard of Highlight.io, Glauber?
I have heard about. Of course, I've heard of Highlight.
Yeah. But anyway, okay, cool. Thanks for coming.
All right.
This was really fun.
Pleasure, guys.
Appreciate your time. Take care.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, let me redo it. How does that sound?
No. Keep it in. Don't redo it. Keep it in the podcast.
Keep going.
You're just messing with them.
Yeah, I'm just messing.